Hey guys, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Ankush from Alif Consulting. Welcome in our Azure Dedicated Host video. In this video, we will be going to talk about what is Azure Dedicated Host is and how we can use this service within our environment for virtual machines. Well, here is the agenda of this video. So we will be going to have a basic understanding. We will be going to have understand the benefits of the service, how the service work, what are the limitations, what are the high availability considerations, what is the pricing, what is the life cycle management, and then at the end we will be going to have a small demo on this service, right? So let's quickly jump to this to the introduction. So Azure Dedicated Host is a service that's provide a physical service where you would be able to host one or more virtual machines dedicated to the one subscription. So think about it in the same way how you do a deployment in an enterprise, right? You have a one physical server where you run your hypervisor layer, and on top of hypervisor layer you run your multiple servers in virtual environment. Same way you can do it in Azure as well. That's where you can buy or you can create your dedicated host, and you can put multiple VMs across your environments in one region on the dedicated host. Again, dedicated is not a new concept. It's same like you do into the physical data center. It's a physical servers, uh, but it's going to be hosted in a Azure only, right? With a dedicated host, you can what you can do, like you can take the advantage of having the availability zone. You can take the advantage of full domain, right? That's kind of things you can take the advantage of by using the dedicated host as well. So what are the benefits we are going to have with the dedicated host? So first benefit which we are having is the hardware isolation at the physical layer level. So what that mean is, like, it's going to be a isolated to the other VM. None of other customer would be able to deploy any of these VMs on the dedicated host. The dedicated host will be only available for you, and you will be only going to deploy or run on the VMs on this dedicated host, right? So another thing which is there is, it's only about the dedicated host, but the other things like this network, other thing like a storage infrastructure, right? Those things would not be the isolated, right? Second benefit which we are going to get is the control over the maintenance event initiated by the Azure platform, where we can, you know, schedule, or we can have, like, when we want to perform the maintenance or when we don't want to perform the maintenance. That's kind of control we have. Third, with the hybrid benefits, right? We can use our own licenses, which we have with us with software insurance, or those licenses can be used to run the VMs or run the dedicated host by getting the hybrid benefits. So that's these are the benefits which we are going to get when we are running our VMs on a dedicated host. So this is how the dedicated host structures looks like. So you do have a first host group. So host group is a resource that represent a collection of dedicated hosts. You can create a host group in a region and in availability zone and add the host into the group. Second one is the host. A host is a resource mapped to a physical servers in Azure data center. The physical server is allocated when the host is created. A host is created within the host group. A host have a SQ describing which VM size can be created. So that's where you can specify when you're creating your dedicated host. You can specify which VM or which families of the SKUs of the VM can be deployed on this dedicated host, right? Each dedicated host can run a multiple VM of different size as long as they are belongs to the same size series. So what that mean is, if let's say we have a multiple series in Azure, as we know, right? So dedicated host can be created by having the selecting the one SKU at the one dedicated host. So if you are running a multiple dedicated host, those dedicated hosts can run the multiple SKUs for the different type, and then you can use those dedicated hosts to run those VMs. But if you're only having a one dedicated host and that has been having a specific or specify the VM series, you would only able to run those specific VM series, or VM belongs to that specific series on that dedicated host. Then how we do a manual and automatic placement for dedicated host. So when you're creating a VM, you can select or which dedicated host can be used. You can also use the options to automatically place your virtual machine in a existing host within the group. So how the automated placement is going to be happen? It's going to check the VM SKU. It's going to check the dedicated host SKU family, and accordingly it's going to place the VM into that dedicated host. When you're creating a new host group, make sure the setting of automatic VM placement is selected. When you're creating a VM, select the host group and let Azure pick the best host for your VM. Host groups that are enabled for automatic placement does not require all the VM to be automatically placed. You will still be able to explicitly pick a host even when your automatically placement is selected for the host group. So that something is there. You can still select in which host you want to run your VM or you want to place your VM. But again, the sizing and the VM SKUs and the families need to be same on the host group. Limitations, yes, we do have a limitation with the dedicated host. The first limitation is we will not be able to redeploy our VMs the way we do when we are running a normal VM. Now, why we cannot redeploy it? Because that physical servers is isolated for us, right? And if we are running a VM on a same dedicated host, which means there is a no sense of doing the redeployment, right? What the redeployment do in actual word is it's replace the backend host where VM is running, right? But in our case with the dedicated host, we only have one physical server which is only allocated for us. So the redeploy is not going to be work. Second limitation which we have is we will not be able to use certain series like DCV2, LSV2, right? MSV2, M series, and NV series VMs, like those kind of VM series we would not be able to use with the dedicated host. So these are the limitation which we have. Now, what are the high availability considerations we have for the dedicated host? So so for the high availability, we should deploy a multiple VM spread across the multiple dedicated hosts, minimum two, same as a normal Azure console we have. With the dedicated host, you can have a several options to provision your infrastructure to shape your fault isolated boundaries. So what you do have a multiple things, like you can use the availability zone for fault isolations, you can use fault domain for fault isolations, you can use the availability zone and fault domain, both of them at the same time. So what the fault isolation is, if anything goes wrong with the dedicated host, how your VM is need to be switched or where this VM is need to be moved, right? Or either you can use the high availability zone to have a multiple dedicated host in a one dedicated host in a one zone, another dedicated host into the another zone, and then another dedicated host in another zone, and that's where you can spread your VMs across this dedicated host. Although if your dedicated host is goes faulty or there is a issue is the with your dedicated host, you would not be able to migrate your VM from one to the another one. The only option we have is use the availability zone to spread your VM across the multiple dedicated host. Now the pricing, right? So pricing is again something like depends on a multiple factors, right? So you just are charged per dedicated host regardless of how many VMs has been deployed. So if we are selected a dedicated host or created with a specific VM SKU family, you will be get charged, right? So in your monthly statement, you will see a new built resources type of host. The VMs on a dedicated host will be still be shown in your statement but will carry a zero price. So what that mean is, it means if you are running a dedicated host or that dedicated host have a running the multiple VMs, you will be only get charged for the dedicated host. Your VM is going to be charge zero, but still in a billing statement you would be able to see that The host price is set based on the VM family, hardware type, and the reason. A host price is relevant to the larger VM size supported on the host. Software licensing, storage, network are billed separately for the host and the VMs. There is no charges to those billable items. So what that means is, as we know, the dedicated host is only give us the compute and memory, but rest of the other component which we need to run the application or to run the VMs over the network, those will be get charged separately. Now, how the host lifecycle run? So we do have a multiple status or the health status you can say, which can help us to identify the situation or the position of our dedicated host. The first is host is available, but that means there is a no issues with your host. The second health state is host is under investigation, which means we have some issues with our host and Microsoft is looking into it. This is a transitional state required for VM to try and identify the scope and root cause for issues identified. Virtual machine running on this may be impacted. The other status which we have it, host pending deallocation, which that means is Azure cannot restore the host back to the healthy state and ask you to redeploy your virtual machines out of this host. If you autoplays on failure is enabled, your virtual machine services hail to the healthy hardware. Otherwise, your virtual machine may be running on a host that is about to fail. The fourth status we have is host dedi deallocation. What that means is all the virtual machine has been removed from the host and you are no longer being charged for the host since hardware has been taken out for rotation. So these are the four health status which we have is for dedicated host. Now let's quickly jump to the demo. So I have already logged in my virtual machine, right? Sorry, I have already logged in my Azure portal. So the first of option, like how exactly you can create the host is, you just need to search for host. You will see a two option, host and host group. So as we know, to create the host, first we need to create the group. So that's something you can do while creating your host, or that's something you can, or host group you can create a separately also. So let's look for host. Sorry, sorry for the typo. Yes, host. And when you're creating a host, you just need to click on create host, and then you need to specify the resource group where you want to create, what is the location is going to be, and what is the host is going to be. Now you can see you do have options to select the group. So if you see, you need to select the group, but if you don't have a group, you need to create the group. You need to specify the availability zone. Do you want to enable the ultra SSD, and what is the full domain count is going to be, right? That's something you can define, and then you can select the which family of dedicated host you want, right? So I am going to get with the DASS one, so that's something you need to select. But I do have other sizes, other SKUs also, and I can select accordingly. So I do have a plenty of VMSQs family which I can use, right? And then you want to enable the automatic placement host on a failure. If that's something you want to enable or disable, that's something you can do. And then you can enable your hybrid benefit on this host as well. And then you can confirm, like if you have already have these licenses, right? And then click on next. You need to specify your tags, click on review and create, right? So in my case, validation is getting failed because this is my the test subscription, and this test subscription does not have a more than 10 core for this subscription as a limit. But all of these VMS sizes or VM families, there is required the higher CPU, right? So you need to make sure you do have your quota increased for your production subscription for all the VMSQ family which you are creating it. And once your dedicated host is created, right, you are very simple to do that. If you're creating a new virtual machines, right, you just need to select the dedicated host in the management, sorry, not in the management, sorry, in the advanced option. If you go into the advanced option, if you drop down, you do see the host uh, option here, and here you can select in which machine, in which dedicated host you want to put this machine. That's something you can do while creation also. But let's take an example. If you have already created your virtual machines, but now you have identified like you need to put the VMs in a dedicated host, right? For that, what you need to do, you need to go into the configuration of your existing VM, and from there you can put your VM into the host group or the dedicated host as well, right? But when you're putting your existing VM in a dedicated host or in a host group, you need to make sure your VM should be in a stop deallocated mode. If your VMs is not stop deallocated mode, you will not be able to perform this configuration changes on the VM for the host or a dedicated host. Well, that's it in this demo. I hope you like this video. If you like, please click on like and subscribe for more upcoming videos, and feel free to reach us if you have any questions. Thank you.